ladies and gentlemen, friendly reminder, tomorrow you have 21 through 30 of vocab. We are doing our final lecture. You will be picking up boards. I'm hoping to cover 90% of our content today to have 10% so I can review and finish our primary. Sounds good? Hello? Perfect. So, on your desk, you should have your notebook ready to go. Yesterday we talked about our different types of federalism, yes? Okay, we talked about dual federalism, which we don't use anymore because it's too isolated. We are now using cooperative federalism, which state and federal governments are working together, yes? Now, our federal and our state governments and cooperative implement fiscal federalism. Did we get to that yesterday? Oh my goodness, okay. This makes me happy. Okay, so fiscal federalism. Don't write down the definition because it's the same one we talked about yesterday from the other slide. Fiscal federalism is when states, when governments are patterns of spending and taxing. So how does that actually work? That's what you're writing down. How does the federal government give states money? That's what your heading is. How does the federal government give states money? The answer is 4 different ways. Isn't this exciting? No? That's okay. That's okay. This is the content we have. Here we go. The first way that the federal government gives states money, make sure you know that's where the money is moving. Federal to states. Why don't we talk about local? Why aren't we talking local? Nick? There you go. So they're kind of cut off. Every once in a while they get a grant, but mostly it's coming from local taxes. So we are only talking from federal to state governments. The first way is grants and aid. Write it down. Grants and aid is the first way the federal gives money to the states. Okay? It is money given for specific reasons. And I would underline specific. It is money given for specific reasons. Okay. So, grants are really, really common and something you'll see all the time. Thank you. Nice seeing you. Okay? They happen all the time. When we talk about grants, you have to write in, listen, I'll tell you what to write. A grant, we use them in education too. So if I want to start a huge project where everyone's working on a MacBook Air, I can write a grant to a company that's willing to fund things, and I write down exactly how much money I need, what it's going to do, how I'm going to implement it, and all the ways this will benefit my kids. That's a grant. They're really annoying to write because they're so involved. Okay? If your parents are in any type of higher education or in a really corporate job at the higher echelons, they typically give grants and read grants all the time. With that being said, when we talk about grants, they're for very specific reasons. Okay? You need to understand that. So, the Tampa airport was built on a grant. $250 million renovation. They said they were spending $80 million on the little tram. Have you ridden on the tram? It's really nice. They were making like $20 million of improvements for the parking. So what it is you have to spend the money exactly what you say. If you spend too much, you're screwed because they're not going to give you any more. And if you spend too little, what happens with that extra money? Goes back to the federal government. So you need to know they must be spent on exactly what they sign off for. Okay? They have to be spent on exactly what it's been spent for. Do you think it's easy or hard to foresee those types of things? Hello? It is incredibly hard. Okay? It is incredibly hard to make the planning that detailed in order to hit things correctly. Things go over a budget and things cost less than you think sometimes, not often. Now, you also need to be aware of categorical grants and categorical grant aids. Just be aware that they exist. Essentially, school lunch programs are based on this. So examples, you should be writing underneath. Grants and aids are going to be examples. You can use it for school lunch programs, Head Start, building airports and highway funding. These are the things they're used to. It is incredibly strict. Okay, so that is one way the federal government moves money to the states. A second way they move money from the federal government to the states is by block grants. Block grants are broad grants from the federal government to give local and state governments a lot of freedom to spend. Okay? These are generic means. So, for instance, every year the federal government gives the state of Florida $125 million for education. You can spend that money on anything you want as long as it falls in the very broad category of education. You could pay teachers more if you wanted to. They don't really do that, just in case you didn't know. You could buy new books. You could build new buildings. You could do whatever you want with it as long as it falls in the big broad category. Okay. Typically, money that is coming in these four ways that I'm describing, they typically go to education or entitlements. What is an entitlement, Ben? Ooh, stumped him. What's an entitlement? Guys, I'm not like going crazy. You could take a little sneak peek, maybe look ahead. It's not like I'm just making it up. What's an entitlement? Jillian? Yeah, what would be an entitlement program that we're familiar with because of 2020 and the world shutting down? Pretty much, most of the country went on what when the world shut down? That's just internet access. Unemployment? Raise your hand if you know someone who went on unemployment during 2020 when the world shut down. A lot of my family was on unemployment because they didn't have access to jobs you could do via the internet. Okay? A lot of people went on it. Yes, it's the highest it's ever been. Super common. Okay? Food stamps is another big entitlement. Entitlement are programs that are there for the benefit of the civilians at the government expense. Why do we do entitlements? Lucas, why do we do them? Okay, it is to help people, but think about it. If you have 6 children, Lucas, and you can't pay the bills, and you can't do your job, who will become responsible for Lucas's 6 kids? The government. So if we help Lucas now, okay, with his 6 kids when he's doing okay, he probably won't need what? Government assistance. But if he is struggling now, okay, he's probably going to continue to struggle if no one helps him, yes? So entitlements are there to help people who are fledgling, to help them stay off of government money. So if we spend $400 now, it is cheaper than spending $10,000 later in 10 years when his whole family is on welfare or in unemployment and things like that. Lucas does not have 6 kids. So if you were wondering, Lucas does not. But hey, future Lucas might have 6 kids. You never know. Okay, when we talk about entitlements, the whole purpose is government support to keep people off of government needs, okay? You're supposed to think short term to think long term, okay? Big programs, Medicaid, ladies and gentlemen, write it down. Big entitlement programs, Medicaid, unemployment, food stamps, shelters to a degree. There's a little bit of a hybrid there, okay? Now, when we talk about block grants, you need to know, put a big star. In the 90s, the federal government stopped dealing with entitlement programs and gave it to the states. In the 1990s, the federal government stopped doing entitlements and gave it to the states and gave them block grants to fund it. So, in the 1990s, federal government, who used to run all the entitlements, gave it to the states, and then the states are now running these programs. Okay? Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Or is it both? It's a both. So, some positives. Write it down. The good thing about states running it, they are more cost effective than federal government. Why is it more cost effective if the state's running it? Scott, why? Yeah, less bureaucracy. And frankly, local politicians are able to focus it more into local needs than a guy who's never even been to the state of Florida, right? Okay, Lilith, what else?
What's bureaucracy?
Bureaucracy is having a lot of people in the middle between the top to the bottom. The more people you have working in the government, it slows things down to a degree. However, it also, from the bottom up, makes things more effective. So there's pro con. There's a balance of how many bureaucrats or people who work for the government. There's a perfect balance. The United States is, okay on it. Other countries are really good. Other countries are really bad. Like China has a huge bureaucracy, slows down a lot of stuff. The United States, depending on the administration. Okay. Block grants. Okay? You do need to know that Medicaid has now become you need to know entitlement programs have become a part of the blockade. You need to know that politicians love them. Why do politicians love them? It's in the definition, Matthew. Why do politicians love these? Help them out. Why do they love them? What do you got for me? Kate?
They get to spend the money like freely.
Yeah, it is like free money with very little rules. Okay? Which one has a ton of rules, ladies and gentlemen? Grants have a ton of money, have a ton of rules. You can only use it for certain things and only that, and then the money has to go back if you don't spend it. Okay? Block grants. As long as you spend in a certain column, you can spend as much as you like. Okay? You can do whatever you want. Okay? Now, a lot of these are going to be spent on entitlements, which are also paid off by the states. So, another major con of it, so we got two positives, politicians love it, it allows for more control over entitlements. A major negative is that programs in one state don't look the same in another state, like education. Let's talk about it. State of Florida, is it in the top, the bottom, or the middle of the 50 states? Oh, you guys are so cute. No, we are mediocre. We're like 26 in the country
That's pretty good.
out of 50.
It's on the bottom.
It's exactly
It's not that high. What do you got?
What is like the number one?
Oh, does anyone know what number one is?
Hawaii.
Yes, it is. Massachusetts. Thank you. I'm from Massachusetts. Okay, that's where I grew up. I came down here my senior year of high school, and I had enough credits that I could graduate when I showed up my junior year, at the end of my junior year.
Did you?
No, because my mommy didn't want me just hanging out doing nothing. Because I would get myself in trouble. So I had the last 2 periods of the day off, and I went to the beach every day and worked on my surfing skills. That was quite the different lifestyle to my Massachusetts, Boston lifestyle. It was pretty great, and I'm a pretty good surfer. Haven't done it in a while, so I wouldn't hold my breath too long on that one, but I used to be pretty good because I spent 2 hours a day working on it. All right. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about block grant, we talk about how it looks different in every single state. State of Massachusetts is number 1, Maryland's number 2, and I think Connecticut is number 3. At the bottom, who's at the bottom of education? No, Ohio's not that bad.
Alaska.
No, Alaska's right in the middle. Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. Yeah, Georgia's pretty low. Georgia, Texas is down there somewhere too, but Texas, there's a lot of things happening with Texas, but we'll deal with that. Okay, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, it's because different states put more or less money towards it. State of Massachusetts throws most of its money towards education. The more money you put towards something, typically the better. It's not always the case, but typically it's better. Other places, they cut money to other programs. We saw this really big in 2020. In the state of New York, they were paying people like per week, like $700 a week. In the state of Georgia with unemployment during 2020, they were giving like $90 a week. Is that a huge jump? Now, of course, we know people living in New York City have the highest rent in the country, but that's for the whole state of New York. So, your entitlements are different per every state. Does that make it easier or hard? It makes it very hard. It's inconsistent and unreliable. We also saw during this time period, different states handled the pandemic better and worse than others because of these entitlements. Food stamps, unemployment, and all that stuff. How did Florida do?
Good.
We did pretty good, actually. We're in like the top 20% of effectiveness with our unemployment distribution during 2020. Keep in mind, it's never crashed like that. We've never had that many people go on it. And the state of Florida did pretty well in responding to it. Other states did better, but we did a majority better than most. So that's great. We have a little self-pride there on that one? No? Okay. Well, block grants. You need to know that your politicians love them because it's kind of like a blank check as long as you fill certain columns. The second thing is that it is used for entitlements, which means every state has different functioning of entitlements. Keep that in mind. Some states are very good at taking care of education and taking very good care of unemployment. Other states have stripped it. Everyone good? Let's talk about revenue sharing. This is your third out of the four. Revenue sharing is the next way that the federal government gives money to the states. Yes, sir?
Wait, was block grants a part of category?
No, categorical falls into grants and aid.
Oh.
See, it says grants and aid. I just need you to be familiar. Sometimes they refer to it as a. Okay, revenue sharing. Okay, it is the federal sharing a fixed percentage of its revenue with the states. Okay, essentially it's a percentage of the GDP, the gross domestic product. Okay, it makes a ton of money, it gives some to the states. Now, I'll let you write that down. Okay, you need to know, put a big star, it's no longer used, but you still need to be familiar with it for AP. It is no longer used. Okay, the reason why it is no longer used is because everyone got the same percentage. So imagine if every single state got $100 million. Okay? State of Florida, which is one of the top 10 largest states with population density in the country right now, $100 million, is it going to move the needle much? Or not really? No. But Rhode Island, which happens to have one of the smallest states and has one of the least population, also gets $100 million. So who benefits more? Rhode Island in your small state. So all the big states who are making the revenue, making the taxes, collecting all the stuff, were getting cranky. While the small states, especially Alaska, were like, yes, keep this going, because they were just getting huge amounts of money from the federal government for really very little effort. It gets scratched during Reagan. Okay, Reagan is the one who ends that. He does it to balance the budget. You need to keep that in mind. Write that down. He uses it to balance the budget and cut taxes, which is both pros and cons. Can we agree? Okay, he doesn't actually balance the budget, but he does cut taxes. And he does a huge tax cut, which has had both positive and negative components of it, but we won't talk about that here. Tax cuts. So by cutting revenue sharing and moving that money to something else, it was able to kind of help budget. Now, it's been both positive and negative. Have you heard the term flyover states? Yes? Indiana, Ohio, all the random states in the middle of the country you rarely think about, yes? Those states, have they thrived or kind of died out a little bit? They've kind of died down a little bit because they're not getting these massive checks anymore, so it's a real up and down. Your fourth and your final way that federal government gives money to the state is by mandates. Okay, it is a term by the federal government that states must meet if they accept federal funds. Okay, did you know up until the 1970s, I think it was like 77, anyone over the age of 18 could drink. It was in 77, they changed it from 18 to 21. Did you know a lot of states did not want to change it? There were a lot of states who were like, hell no. And their big argument was, if I can send this kid to war, why can't he order a beer? Which is a pretty good argument. Okay, whatever your thoughts are, it's a pretty good argument. With that being said, how did the federal government get everyone to join this 21. Luke.
They said they wouldn't give them highway funding.
There you go. The federal government said, which is one of the largest revenue streams the state gets, is the federal highway fund. If you take this money, you have to make it. It is a tit for tat. You need to write that down. It is a tit for tat arrangement. You get the money if you do this. Yes, Josh.
What was their reasoning for wanting to change it?
Because the reason why they wanted to change it is because there were so many car accidents that were happening. The U.S. is much larger than most of your European countries, which is where they typically have the 18, and so many people were dying in car accidents because they were drinking and driving.
That number, you think that was
Yes, it did, actually. It did. And I could argue both sides of the argument, whether 18-year-olds should drink. For being honest, I could argue it both ways. But it did actually cut down on deaths. So, I mean, there's pros and cons to it. I think if you can go off to war and you have a military ID, I personally think you should be able to drink anywhere you want. But the federal government, that's how they get it. It's a mandate.
Did you know that Disney World's trying to get, like, the laws changed within Disney World so 18-year-olds can drink?
Why would they do that? They don't even sell alcohol in their parks. Not really. Epcot?
You just walk around and you drink different world.
Oh, I'm so
drinks.
thank you for telling me as the only 21 or up person in the room. I'm talking like Magic
My mom
Kingdom.
does it.
I'm gonna get back to this that's on your test on
Okay.
Thursday. Well, okay. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, mandates are used by the government for a justification of funds. You're gonna see this in big ways for education and implementation of sorry, I'm not trying to do it for dramatic pause. I'm literally, the word escapes me. You are doing it for education as well as you are doing it for administrative purposes, like administrative goals. So, for instance, here in education, did you know that every time you pass a standardized test, we get money? Yeah. Do you know every time a kid walks across the stage, our school gets $200? Stage for graduation. Our school gets $200. Did you know that every time teachers, like for instance, I get AP money off of how many of you pass the exam? You know that, yes? I get $50. But you take 2 exams, so I'm making how much off you, Olivia? $100. That's why your girl's here right now. Okay? So, with that being said, the whole thing, the reason why you have to take the classes you have to take, the reason why you have to have the grade point average is because we don't get money unless the federal government checks the box and saying we did what we were supposed to do. That's a mandate. So if we want our $200 for getting you across the stage, you have to have a minimum GPA. You have to take these certain courses. By you doing that, we get a check. Why does the government do this? Why? Anna?
They don't think an educated population.
Well, yes, they have an educated population, but they want to make sure their money is doing something, correct? Civil rights movement. A lot of people in the 1960s were not into the civil rights. Stop discriminating on race, sex, gender, or identity. So what the federal government did in order to make these more embraced by the population was saying you cannot accept federal money unless your state is doing this. Federal buildings are doing this. You cannot get tax breaks unless you're doing these things. That is how these types of changes are rolled down from top to bottom. You don't get money unless you do this. That's what a mandate is. Okay? You need to write this down. To get money, you have to meet certain requirements. So, if we want our federal money at this school, which we depend on heavily, that's the 20-day count. Don't you get a message like tomorrow is the 20th day of school? You have to be at school? Yes? It's because we make money off of how many kids are sitting in our school. It's a huge deal. The 20-day count is a big deal. That's how we immediately get money from the federal government. Okay? So, you have to do this to get that. Those are your 4 ways federal governments give states. Okay, quick review. Which one do politicians love the most? Jillian.
The
Blockade. Why?
because it lets them spend money.
Yeah, they can do kind of whatever they want. Which one do you think the federal government loves the most, Josh? Of the four, which one do you think the federal government would love? You have a 1 in 4 shot, dude. 25% right. We just covered them. Aiden, help me out. No, Nick. Mandates. Why, Nick?
Because you have to meet the requirements.
Yes, you have to meet the requirements. You can't just accept cash. You have to check the boxes as you go. There's also money trail. What do you got, Lucas?
If the federal government decides how much money they give the states, and you say that the federal government likes mandates the most, why don't they just only do mandates?
Because everyone else would be so bogged down in checking the box. Do you know how hard it is to get you people across the stage? Oh my god. It is so annoying to get you through all those tests and all that stuff. If every single amount of money coming from the federal government required all those boxes to be checked, dude, we have no highway system, we'd have no entitlements, we'd have none of that. So it has to be different types of streams of money, right? There has to be some easier ways, some harder ways to make sure the money is going to where it needs to be, but there's enough money to be accessed as well. That's why. Good question. Okay. Which one is the most specific, Kinslin? Which one's the most annoying? For states. Which one's the most annoying for states? You got a 1 in 4 shot, Kinslin. No. What do you got, Steffi? Grants are the most annoying for states because you have to have everything planned out, and if you over budget, under budget, you're totally screwed. So it's got to be right on. All right, questions about those 4? What do you got?
So does that have to be exactly on it? Like, what if you're a dollar under?
There's a little bit of fluff room, but it's not a ton. And do you think government projects go over by $1? No, they go over by millions. Okay? The government is not known for spending wisely. That's the big problem, and that's why grants are a good thing because it kind of limits the budget. Okay, so underneath these 4, right? Pros, cons. Okay, so the big pros. There's 1 pro and 2 cons. States love receiving money. Okay, it's free money. However, they don't like oversight, federal oversight. What is oversight, Andrew?
You want me to read it?
No, I'd like you to maybe surmise it or like know the information. What's government oversight, Andrew?
I mean, it's like, you like oversee.
You can't use the same word in the definition. Help me out, Matthew. No, they're not telling you how to do something because they gave you the money. The money's already there. It's already been spent. What's government oversight, Adam? Yes, or where the money's went, right? That's where the money has gone. Where did it actually get spent? Because everyone will say they're going to throw, like for instance, did you know the lottery here in the state of Florida lies to you when they say, this money is spent on education? You do know the lottery is not really pulled to our education. Less than 5% of it actually goes to Florida education. You know that, yeah? Our legislative house in Florida has siphoned off the money to fund other projects. So very little of lottery money comes to education. Shocking! So, federal oversight is tracking where that money actually gets spent. Do you think politicians would lie to us and steal our money and put it in their pet projects?
Yes.
Shocking! Yes! Okay? So, Governor DeSantis, okay? Or any governor, and any of the previous governors, including the new Democratic candidate running, his re-election is in November. Charlie Crist is running against him as the Democratic challenger to DeSantis. So we have 2 people going for it. Then we can all agree we think DeSantis is probably going to win because he definitely has a majority. Both of these candidates have their own hometown projects that they have pulled money to or could. Government oversight stops politicians from stealing money from the federal government to use for other projects. Luke. Well, States think it as a positive and negative. The fact that we see it as a positive, right? If the government is getting money for education, it should be going to what, Luke? Education. However, politicians see it as a negative because the government is still interfering with the money even though the money has come and gone. Another major con is that government programs look different in other states. Okay? California has one of the largest entitlements of all states. They have the largest unemployment, Medicaid, and food stamps that they give out to their people. Why? Because the state house has pushed the money towards it, yes? Republican states typically are anti-entitlement, so they have cut those. So, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, which are super heavy Republicans, have cut those entitlements. So, what a person in California gets per week for their family of 4 is completely different in California than it is in Alabama. In some regard, though, is the lifestyle more expensive in California? Yeah, so there's part of that too. But we have different programs in different states. Okay? So, some states fund education better than others. Florida, we're middle of the ground. Ohio is on the bottom, which is why their teachers we're striking in Ohio. The fourth largest school district in Ohio is officially on strike, and they are refusing to go in the door. Okay? So these are the types of things that have different states having different problems. Yes, ma'am?
So they just don't have school?
Yeah, school's canceled because the teachers won't go in.
You go on strike this time?
Huh?
You go on strike?
No, we can't strike here in Hillsborough County. We gave away our rights to strike in the 90s. So we can't strike.
Like you get.
Can you protest?
No, I get fired immediately if I talk to my neighbor over there and hey, we should strike. And if it gets reported back, I can lose my job immediately. It's in my contract. I will not strike. We gave it up for a $10,000 bonus in the 80s. Do I sound bitter? Oh my God, did that come off bitter? No. Nick.
Where in Ohio?
I don't know. Google Ohio teachers and it will pop up because they're out in the state. They are protesting. Now, the interesting thing, teachers across the country in Republican-based states have been rebelling since 2020 and standing outside picketing because Republicans have their things, Democrats have their issues. Yes, Democrat budgets usually go significantly over budget. Republicans are usually closer to balancing, which is obviously the ideal. However, one of the things they take away is from entitlement in education. So it's just a pro-con. There's lots of factors, but it typically is the case. What do you got, Luke?
Do they ever keep the budget properly and achieve perfectly?
No. Why would politicians make sure they spend correctly? They got to make sure they do enough projects so they can get reelected because it's about them, not us, Luke. Come on now, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. No, hell no. Steffi.
Are we gonna?
By the way, hold on 2 seconds, Steffi. I don't mean to be rude. We are starting our powers now. Right, federal powers. That's our last big section is powers. Steffi, what do you got, girl?
Are we gonna do the McCulloch versus Maryland patent?
Yes, we're doing it tomorrow. I'm hurrying through my actual content so we can do all that tomorrow. I'm working hard up here, Steffi. Not gonna lie. Alright, so when we talk about federal powers, this is what the federal government controls our central government. There are 3 things they control. They have express powers, implied powers, and inherent powers. Okay, so the federal government has 3 different types of powers. The first one is expressed, which means it is said in the Constitution. We can read it off of it. What is an express power we read in the Constitution, Wesley? What is something that was written flat, cold as day in the Constitution? We can what, every citizen? How do they make money, Wesley?
Tax.
Tax. Okay, it is specifically stated multiple times in the Constitution, the federal government can tax. The federal government can declare war. The federal government can raise an army. Those things are in it. The federal government can create a census. Remember, we read census? Okay, they can create an electoral college. Thank you. Couldn't come up with that, Ben. Thank you. Okay? Explicitly said is what express powers are. Implied. Implied powers are not said in the Constitution, but are based on necessary and proper clause. You need to know that. It's all based on the necessary proper clause, and I would circle it, highlight it, whatever you need to do. When we talk about implied powers, it's not said in the Constitution, but in order for them to do their job, they need to have it. For instance, collecting taxes. In order to collect taxes, the federal government has to have a what? McAuliffe and versus Maryland. They have to have a bank. Yes, implied. Anywhere in the Constitution does it say bank? No. However, you can't collect taxes unless you have a bank. Okay. Another thing, another example, and you should be writing down my examples, of course, because on your test, what is it going to be? Examples. Another example is the Constitution says we can have a raise an army. What happens if no one signs up for the military? We do a what? We do a draft. That's not specifically said in the Constitution, but it is a implied power, because if we don't have anyone in the military, we can't raise an army. So without having a draft, we can't fulfill the requirements of the Constitution. So implied powers are not stated, but by the necessary and proper clause, get us what we need. Everyone okay? What do you got, Luke? Yeah.
How do you approve the draft?
So Luke, this is incredibly sexist, but on your 18th birthday, you're gonna get a draft card.
Oh.
Why is that sexist, Luke?
Dude.
Yes, I did not get a draft card on my 18th birthday.
I'm sorry.
Well, thank you. Oh my God, thank you so much. I feel so much better that someone acknowledges my struggle. No, I think you can tell I'm a bit of a feminist. I don't apologize for that. I just wasn't sure if you knew. Feminists believe in equality of the sexes, right? I can't have rights unless I'm willing to do what men are expected to do, right? So I can't say I want all these rights if I'm not willing to do what a man has to do. And here in the United States, you actually have to step up and enlist into the draft, yeah?
So you want to be
Now, Luke, listen. Now, Luke, do you want to be drafted? Luke, do you want to be drafted? Depends. That's a very, very patriotic answer. No. Now, do I think I would be well served in the military? Hell no. This is not front lines ready, okay? What I am telling you though, Luke, if there is a tragedy that affects the United States, I will do my patriotic duty and I will serve as best as I can. But I can't ask for the same rights as you if I'm not willing to do what you have to do as well. So that's why I say yes. If I want the same rights, same pay, same equality, same as a man, then I have to sign up and be drafted just like a man, and so I support that.
But I mean, like, how does it have to go through like all three, like House, Senate?
What, the draft?
Yeah. Like,
Congress has to enact it. Executive branch usually triggers it, and Congress has to approve it.
Is it just like majority or like 2/3?
I think it's 2/3. Yeah, but don't quote me on that. I haven't gone to that in my APGov research. Does that make sense? Because I don't know all this stuff. I know a lot of it, but I didn't know all of it. Like some of this stuff is new to me. Here we go. Inherent are your third of the federal powers. Third of your federal powers. So, with that being said, inherent powers are dealing with foreign countries. That's the big one, is foreign countries. Inherent powers are essentially doing what's best for the nation with outsiders. Okay? So, it's doing the best for the nation, dealing with the outside. So, if Josh, see ya. Good, we're in a good spot. I'm happy. I know you don't care if I'm happy, but I'm happy. See ya.